Bill Shankly never struggled to tell the world what he thought. He believed Liverpool was the greatest football club on earth. He believed its supporters were second to none. And he never hesitated to defend his players against anyone. Praise from Bill Shankly was never given cheaply, especially to another manager. Yet throughout his life, one name kept returning whenever football greatness was discussed: Jock Stein. Not simply as a rival, not simply as a fellow Scot, but as a man Shankly admired more deeply than most people ever realized. Before his death, Shankly left no doubt about what he thought of his old friend. He called Stein a great manager, a great man, a friend of many years. Then came the verdict that has echoed through football ever since. Stein, he's the best. Those words carried extraordinary weight, because they came from a man whose standards were almost impossible to satisfy. This was not admiration built on one famous match, or one remarkable trophy. It was earned through years of rivalry, respect, shared values, unforgettable battles, and moments that only two football giants could truly understand. To discover why Bill Shankly believed Jock Stein deserved that extraordinary tribute, subscribe to the channel and join us as we go back to where their remarkable story really began. Bill Shankly and Jock Stein had far more in common than either man cared to admit. They lived to win. And they despised losing. That was why they understood each other so well. But once the whistle blew, friendship meant nothing. In the spring of 1966, Liverpool and Celtic met in the European Cup Winners' Cup semi-final. Stein's Celtic struck first, defeating Liverpool 1-0 at Celtic Park and putting Shankly's European dream in danger. Anfield responded. Driven by the Kop, Liverpool produced a magnificent 2-0 victory to turn the tie around and knock Celtic out of Europe. For Stein, the defeat was devastating. For Shankly, it confirmed something he would never forget. Jock Stein never accepted defeat quietly. Even after the final whistle, tempers exploded as bottles rained onto the pitch. Looking across at his old friend, Shankly broke the tension with a line only he could deliver. "Jock, do you want your share of the gate money, or shall we just return the empties?" Behind the laughter was genuine respect. Shankly had just faced a man with the same relentless hunger that drove him every single day. Long before Europe called Jock Stein Immortal, Bill Shankly already knew he was one of football's greatest managers. Bill Shankly often said football was about people. Jock Stein believed exactly the same. Long before either man lifted league titles or European trophies, they came from Scotland's mining communities, where every man depended on the one beside him. There were no passengers, no shortcuts. Everyone carried their share. Those lessons stayed with them for life. Neither man believed one brilliant player could build a great team. The collective always came first. Absolute commitment was expected. Anything less was simply unacceptable. That philosophy transformed Liverpool. It transformed Celtic. Years later, Shankly explained what made Stein so special. He admired the way Stein could take players with different talents, different personalities, and different backgrounds, then mold them into one united team. Shankly described it as a form of socialism without the politics.
Useful players, and he trains them the right way, and he gets them all to do what they can do, well. It's a form of socialism without the politics, of course.
Coming from Bill Shankly, it was one of the greatest compliments another manager could ever receive. Because without even trying, he was also describing himself. Shankly inspired with passion, Stein inspired with calm authority. Their personalities were different. Their methods often looked different. But the principles beneath them were almost identical. The club always came before the individual. The team always came before the star. And perhaps that was the real reason Bill Shankly understood Jock Stein better than almost anyone else. He wasn't simply looking at another great manager. He was looking at a man who saw football through the very same eyes. Bill Shankly had one of football's biggest personalities. He could inspire a dressing room with a single speech, charm a room full of reporters, or convince the world that every Liverpool player was the finest in Britain. Most people simply smiled and listened. Jock Stein smiled, then answered back. Stein knew exactly what his old friend was doing. Shankly wasn't boasting for himself. He was building belief inside his players. But Stein never missed the chance to tease him. He once joked that if Liverpool's players were really as good as Shankly claimed, they wouldn't just win football matches, They would win the Ryder Cup, the boat race, even the Grand National. Shankly laughed, because he knew Stein understood him better than most. The jokes hid something much deeper. Neither man was fooled by reputation. Neither cared for excuses. Both judged people by character, commitment, and what they produced when the pressure was greatest. They managed differently, but they recognized the same qualities in each other. And with every meeting, Bill Shankly became more convinced that Jock Stein belonged among football's true giants. The greatest proof of that belief was still waiting in Lisbon. By 1967, Bill Shankly knew exactly how difficult it was to conquer Europe. Just 2 years earlier, Liverpool had come within touching distance of the European Cup final, before falling to Helenio Herrera's formidable Inter Milan. It was one of the hardest defeats of Shankly's career. Now another Scottish manager stood in the same path. Jock Stein. Celtic were preparing to face the mighty Inter in Lisbon. Few believed they could overcome the Italian champions. Shankly understood the challenge better than almost anyone. Yet instead of watching from home, he travelled to Portugal. He was the only English club manager there, not because Liverpool were playing, because Jock Stein was. Before the final, Shankly made an observation that revealed just how highly he regarded his old friend. He said Stein and Herrera shared one remarkable quality. Both men hated losing. It was the greatest test of Stein's career. The masters of attacking football against the masters of Catenaccio, a team built around local Scottish talent against one of Europe's most feared champions. Shankly watched from the stands as 90 minutes prepared to change football history forever. He had no idea that before the night was over, he would say the words that would define Jock Stein's legacy for generations. The final began exactly as many had expected.
Lisbon, Celtic versus Inter Milan in the final of the European Cup. If any British team could win this coveted trophy, it had to be Celtic.
Inter Milan struck first. For most teams, that would have been the beginning of the end. Not for Jock Stein's Celtic. They refused to abandon the attacking football that had brought them this far. Wave after wave, they pushed forward. Tommy Gemmell brought Celtic level. Then, with only minutes remaining, Stevie Chalmers turned the match forever. Celtic had done the impossible. They became the first British club to lift the European Cup. A team built almost entirely from local players had conquered Europe. Watching from the stands was Bill Shankly. He understood better than anyone what Stein had just achieved. He knew the sacrifices, the pressure, the years of rebuilding, and he knew victories like this came only once in a lifetime. After the celebrations began, Shankly made his way into Celtic's dressing room. Players, officials and reporters packed the room as history unfolded around them. Then Shankly walked towards his old friend. He didn't call him Jock, he called him John, the name used by Stein's family. Then came the words that football has never forgotten. John, you're immortal. It wasn't simply a compliment. It was the verdict of one legendary manager recognizing another. And nearly 60 years later, those words still define how football remembers Jock Stein. The greatest rivalries rarely end with the final whistle. Neither did this one. After announcing his retirement from Liverpool, Bill Shankly returned to the touchline one last time for Billy McNeill's testimonial at Celtic Park. Waiting in the opposite dugout was Jock Stein. For one final afternoon, two of Britain's greatest football minds stood across from each other once again. Years of fierce competition had never weakened the respect between them. If anything, it had strengthened it. When Bill Shankly passed away in 1981, football lost one of its true giants. Among those who came to pay their respects was Jock Stein. It was a quiet reminder that some friendships outlive every victory and every defeat. Stein later said that no Scot had ever made a greater impact on a football club than Bill Shankly. He believed no manager had ever shared a stronger bond with his supporters. To Stein, Shankly represented everything football should be. Perhaps that was always the real story. Not Liverpool against Celtic. Not one manager trying to outshine another. But two working-class Scots who transformed their clubs, inspired generations, and quietly recognized greatness in each other long before the rest of the football world did. Today, both men are gone. Yet their influence still lives in every manager who believes the team comes before the individual. In every supporter who understands that football is built on loyalty, belief, and community. And in every generation that continues to tell their story. The trophies gather dust, but true football legends never do. If you believe football's greatest legends should never be forgotten, subscribe to the channel and help us preserve the stories that built the beautiful game.